Today we are talking about beginning to budget. As I said, this is one of my favorite topics to cover for two reasons. The first is that this can be the foundation for all of your financial goals to really propel your life forward. It really just enhances the effectiveness of whatever you're trying to reach by either bringing awareness to it, helping to shape habits surrounding it. It is just so crucial. It's just such a useful tool. And on a personal level, using a simple budget is what made the difference when I was turning my financial life around due to just a lack of or a lot of ignorance when it came to financial matters, and starting a budget and figuring out what this looked like for me was my step one. And so it always just has that extra special place for me. And that is what I've promised today, simplifying how to build a realistic budget from scratch using a spreadsheet template. And so yes. Sorry, I've got three screens ahead of me. With this template, it is in the resources tab in the Zoom widget. You can also find it at cafcu.org/webinars. It is in the opening block, and I will include a link in the follow-up email. On that, you should see 5 tabs. 3 of them are examples, 2 of them are blank for you to fill in on your own, which we'll talk about how to do that going through all of this. Additionally, if that's saved as an Excel file, if you don't have Excel, you can still download the file and then upload it to Google Drive. And then within Google Drive, you can open the file options and select Open With and select Google Sheets. All of the formulas should still work. It did when I checked it earlier. And this just shows that pathway for it. Excel is a paid service. If you're trying to find a free way to mess with spreadsheets, Google Sheets is a great way to do it. And there's other programs out there as well, of course. With this spreadsheet that I've shared, some real quick mindsets that go in with this and with financial wellness in general. We want it to be realistic. We want it to be adjustable. Life is always changing. Your budget's going to change with it. And so making it easy to adapt to new things going on or adapt to new things going on is crucial. Intentioned. So this is really understanding your why you're budgeting, your priorities within this. It's going to make decision making a lot easier, and it's going to help drive focus and keep you engaged with the budget, which also feeds into simple and easy. They pretty much mean the same thing. I'm listing it twice because it's that important. There are so many things that detract from budgeting, whether it's the stigma surrounding budgeting, or people just not wanting to make those adjustments to their life, or if it just gets too complicated or complex. And so keeping it simple and easy is huge for ongoing ease and getting in and out of it, making the adjustments you need so you can see these simple numbers as they're going on. Now, with this budget and with the examples I gave, this is built off of an individual person. They have biweekly pay, they rent an apartment, utilities are included except for their electric, and they've got some debt accumulated. This is meant to be a flexible budget. This is just to show these things in action and to talk about some of the things behind this. But the whole point is that you can make this your own and include what you need to. And so let's do that. Let's go through this step by step and get this moving for building this simple, realistic, straightforward budget for managing your life and your finances. So, step one, you just start with listing your income. With your income, this I have found that it's better to start from net pay. So this is after retirement benefits and taxes. The reason is we don't want to track too far above what's being deposited into our account, just because then we're creating those extra steps when the realities are this is what we are dealing with, this after line. If we go through the budget and you're making revisions and you're finding ways to save and you're still struggling to make ends meet, you might go above the net pay line at that point and look at if you're in the right retirement plan, if you are using the right benefits, making sure your taxes are set up correctly. That's when you would go in to make the change. But since this is also limited at times of when you can make those adjustments, we want to look at what's going on in the immediate. So after the net pay, if your income varies, you want to plan towards the low end for a paycheck. The reason is you don't want to depend on money that's not going to be there. And so if you plan at the low end, then you're making sure that all of your expenses are covered within there. If it does vary, but you have some consistency in it, then just average it out. That should also work. Obviously, as specific as we can make it with actual numbers, the better. And you can adjust as it goes on, but just for general planning, this is where we're starting with. Don't include if come. So this is income that may not be there. If somebody owes you money, if your business does well for your side hustle, if you don't want to just depend on that if you've got bills and responsibilities on the line. So don't include it. If you do get it later on, great. And then you can apply it to all those different things you need, but you're just not basing your success off of something that may not be there. And with your income and with a budget, setting up direct deposit for it to automatically go into your account is, again, simplifying, making it easier. You're reducing steps of needing to go cash it and then deposit it. You're keeping it secure. Direct deposit's a great option, and that's going to trigger a lot of payment allocation, automatic transfers that we're going to talk about in a bit. So that's starting with your income. Next, we're going to start listing our savings, and we go savings first because we don't want to wait till our savings are at the end of the line. We want to really build them in to keep going with it. With our savings, we're looking at this from a monthly view for that income for this as well. There's a lot of statistics about a lack of emergency savings that people have. I recommend everyone should have an emergency fund. Emergencies are always around the corner. You can start with $400, work to build it to 1,000, work to build it to 1 month, to 3 months. Don't set the goal too large immediately because it'll be harder to engage with. Just keep the numbers building, and we'll talk about how to make this easy to build those savings. Holiday funds, the idea being that if you are spending money at the end of the year on holidays, whether that is travel, whether that is gifts, purchases, money is always involved. And planning for that ahead of time by saving up throughout the year makes it a lot easier than suddenly saying, I need to come up with a large sum of money to do this. And this way you can also avoid putting it on a credit card. There's a lot of statistics about how debt builds following Q4 just from all the different holiday spending. This is an example. If you did on a biweekly paycheck $25, so every 2 weeks when you're paid, you submitted a transfer to your holiday fund, 21 paydays, $500 by November 1st for all of your holiday spending. This is one example, obviously adjust to whatever your holiday plans might be. And with these savings, a great place to put these accounts for these different saving goals is a specialty share account, is what we call it here at CAFCU, Corporate America Family Credit Union. Specialty share accounts, it's a $5 minimum balance. You can name it whatever you would like, and this way you can build your savings for these short-term goals. And I say short-term goals if they are longer goals, so goals within 1 to 2 years. If you're looking at longer goals, then I would recommend you start to look at higher interest-bearing accounts. But since these are short-term, it's usually too short to really accumulate interest. And instead, it's about keeping it simple, viewable, and separate. So we're not putting all of our holiday fund into our emergency fund because if the emergency happens and we're still going to want to do something with the holidays, so having that separation helps with that distinction. So you're going to include your savings goals, whatever they may be. And then we're going to start listing some of our debt. We're going to start with just the minimum due amount. You may want to be paying extra. We have a session coming up March 20th for defeating debt, and we will talk about this in greater detail. But start with the minimum due, and then you want to mark the date for records for when that payment is due. But the goal is to pay it early, and we're going to talk about that in some other slides. But within your budget, you definitely want to be including debt. You want to include the things you are responsible for. We are just looking at how money is moving in and out of your account. After we list the debt, we're going to get into all of our expenses. Fixed expenses are obviously the best, the ideal, because then we know exactly what it's going to be month after month, and we can plan for that more accordingly. And you just list them as they are. Here's the due date, and here's the amount. If they are varied, if it's a utility service and it seems to fluctuate, it's very similar to income, except instead of planning for the low end, we want to plan for the high end. Because similarly, we want to make sure that we are including everything we would need for what we're going to be responsible for. And so if we plan for the high end, we know that we have it covered. If we don't, and we don't have that money, then it can throw the budget off in other areas. And so planning on the high end, if the bill comes in lower, fantastic. You can save, you can apply the money, as we've said. Consistent average, similar. If the bill is consistent, figure the average and then just use that as the tracking and adjust as you go along. Bucket categories. So these are general spending. I'm going to talk about this in greater detail on another slide, but this is food or household. This is your transportation. For some people, this is entertainment. Others, it might be uh, going out to eat at a restaurant. Um, Areas where you are just going to have general spending that's going to take place that you want to keep an eye on and make sure that you've included the amount for how much. This is a common mistake that people make within budgets is they say, okay, well, here's my budget, everything looks great, and then they don't accommodate uh, food and groceries, and then it throws the whole budget off. And extra, really include everything. If this is something that you're responsible for, if your money is going towards these things, whatever it may be, this could be charities, this could be subscription services, this could be whatever it is for an ongoing monthly payment, just make sure you have everything included because that's going to help keep this as realistic as possible. Additionally, you will see in the spreadsheet an area for biannual and annual expenses. We are building these on this monthly basis, but there are bills that come up outside of just that monthly basis. And so this keeps us aware and it lets us include it in these future months so it's not coming out of nowhere. And yes, built into those ongoing tracking, this can also be a great way to save money if there's a service that you like that you know you are going to keep going from a monthly payment to a, you know, biannual payment, annual payment, whatever that is, can usually save money within this as well. And if you do have a side hustle, this is where you can start to save some money towards this. And if you are paid bi-weekly, there are 2 months where you end up with uh, three paychecks, you know, an extra paycheck in these areas. And that can be a great savings place for some of these annual expenses as well, just so you know that you have it covered no matter when it comes up. And let me show you our first formula with this spreadsheet. Again, the goal is simple, simple, simple. And so the formulas that I've included, I think are simple and they are meant to be very adjustable so you don't have to worry about inputting all these crazy codes. So formula number one, we are just looking at the sum of all of these things together. We look at the amounts that we've just listed from our income all the way down to this monthly total. It's just equal sum and then that cell range. You want to select the cell that is right next to the total box. So that way, if you are adding in lines or taking away lines, as long as it's right next to that total box, it should adjust accordingly within that. And so that's going to let you know, first off, did I meet my monthly goal for my monthly savings? And then, or monthly ongoing budget tracking, that you are in the green, that everything works smoothly, that you don't need to find more money to be paying for different services. Um, we're also looking at the total of the annual. And so this formula is where we take that monthly total times 12, one for each month. We add in those extra paychecks, B2 and B3 for this example. And then we add in plus F8. And so F8 was the biannual expenses. It's listed as a negative, just to make sure we are adding these things incorrectly. It's one of those minus negatives, cancel things out. And so we want to make sure we have it all. And again, this just gives us a view. Do we have it all covered? Is everything good to go? Do I have enough for my annual expenses, um, which are covered under those extra paychecks in this example? So let's say it wasn't good to go and you needed to make some adjustments to it. This is where we can start to revise within savings and debt. maybe with the holiday fund, we adjust how much we're really putting towards this. With the short-term savings goal, if your goal is to go on a vacation, I put priorities and realities. Priorities in, does this match up to your other goals? If you have a goal of really aggressively paying down your debt, you can save and pay down debt at the same time. But if you think you are saving for things that are not as crucial for you, then you might want to adjust from that point based off priorities. But the realities are, if it's a family trip, if you're going on that vacation, it would still behoove you to save for it and not to put it on a credit card later on, where you're going to end up paying extra interest on that. And so this is where you start to adjust based off your own life and what you need. Personal loan, you can potentially refinance a personal loan. You can say, hey, maybe I can get a better rate, more flexible monthly terms, or just a different monthly payment, and this can start to save. Or in the example of this person, they could look at their different credit card payments, their personal loan, that's three different payments they're making. And they could say, I want to consolidate this and I'm going to move it into one payment. And that's going to reduce the interest with those credit cards by a lot, I'm sure. And it would simplify the whole thing. It's not one payment going out instead of three payments. And that can be a great way if you have more debt. And again, we'll talk about this March 20th, defeating debt. But consolidating is a great way to save money within your monthly budget if you have debt accumulated. With our monthly expenses, if we're looking at utilities, we can monitor the usage. Services, different plan options. Am I using everything I'm paying for within my cell phone plan? Buckets, reduce and replace. This is where we look at, are we, if we're getting groceries and we're spending too much of groceries, is it looking at the store that we are buying from? Is it looking at the things we're buying specifically? That's where we say, reducing, replacing, really trying to find good alternatives. And that's similar within this extra. You could look at these streaming subscriptions and say, okay, well, maybe I'll switch this to an annual and save that money there with some of these extra paychecks. Or this is where you can look at alternatives. I always recommend the library. It's a great place for free resources. They've got many budgeting or many streaming apps for everything included. Let me check this. Okay, and then even within this, revise the biannual expenses. We've got renter's insurance. Potentially this person could bundle it with their other insurance they've got. With car insurance, maybe it's working with a broker to find comparison options for an insurance broker or extra insurance. This person had term insurance. This is again based off individual needs. I'm a certified credit union financial counselor, not a financial advisor. So I'm not here to talk to you about insurance to this level, but something to look at within your own life. And some of these store memberships or where you're paying access to then pay more money, are you saving enough from this membership to set off that annual payment? So this is something to keep in mind with revising. And I add income at the end here, just because this is the hardest thing to adjust within your monthly budget. And that's due to many areas outside of our control, and the limited resource of time itself and earning that money. And so this is where within our income, we could say, okay, well, maybe we are adjusting above the net pay line. Maybe we are trying to find a side hustle or an extra gig economy job to make ends meet in short months, or just to have additional income for your monthly budget. And then you can also look at increasing your primary income, whether that is developing your skills, requesting raises, finding different lines of work potentially. This is just the most difficult one I have found within a monthly budget. And so that's where I always talk about those other options first. There's many ways to save without reducing the quality of your life. And it's really about finding what works for you. And so within Excel, as you're making some of these edits, you just select the cells, secondary click. My son is left-handed. I've learned that I can't just say right click because it's not the same thing for him. And so it's just a secondary click with a mouse, and you select insert, and it will shift, and then select shift cells down, and it will include the amount of cells that you selected. So you go all three across, because then it will just keep moving it down as you are adding different things in, as you are taking different things out. And so this is giving us this monthly overview. We are right at this time. I'm going to keep going because I ran into some tech stuff as it happens. But if you do need to run, again, you are going to be sent a recording of this session. Thank you for your patience for me and with Zoom as I went through some of those things. Thank you for being here today. And hopefully you'll are able to join us for future sessions because we've got some great things lined up for this year. I'm going to keep moving it forward. So, within making edits, these formulas should adjust as you're adding and removing these lines. And you can always just click on the cell where the formula is, and it will highlight the boxes as I've shown for what those may be. So we did our overview. We looked at everything that we were responsible for within our month. And so now we are going to move on to making this an ongoing actionable budget, that we are making sure we are keeping up with it, that we are accountable for the different bills that we have, and we are spending appropriately. And so within this monthly layout, we're going to add the paychecks. I cannot recommend enough automatic transfers and advance payments and then split payments. The reason is you want to make it as easy as possible on yourself. When your paycheck comes in and it's direct deposit, it goes into your account, you can set it up so that on an ongoing basis, it is automatically transferring that different amount into your savings goals. And so in this example, we've got the goal was $100 a month towards the emergency fund, $50 from each paycheck, and it just happens automatically, and you don't have to think about it, and off it goes. Similar with advance payments. Just because a bill is due on a later date, you can usually pay early with no penalty, and taking care of it early on reduces that stress. You know it's covered, and this is where we really start to break that paycheck to paycheck cycle and really getting ahead. And so that is where, within this example, I've listed credit card 1 and credit card 2 just after the first paycheck. Whenever that money comes in, you make those payments, and then you don't have to worry about meeting the specific date. Split payments. And so with your different loans that you may have for, let's say, this personal loan, consolidation loan, this is again splitting this up bi-weekly. So you'll be paying the full amount each month because it's 2 paychecks in this example, split bi-weekly. By doing it this way, you are paying the interest down faster because you're paying the principal down faster, because there's also 2 months where you're going to have an extra payment made. And so you will find yourself ahead of it with this method, and it does pay off loans faster. It saves time, saves money. I just cannot recommend it enough. And that simplicity aspect of just never having to worry about making that happen yourself, it just keeps going. We also, in this monthly layout, we're going to add all of our expenses that we just listed. Again, we're going to mark these with the different due dates that they come in, so we know that we are planning to have the amount at the right time. And then at the end of all of this list, we're going to add our buckets. You can see there at the bottom with food, household, and transportation. And again, I'm going to talk about buckets in just a little bit. And we are just saying, is this the general chronological order of how this stuff moves for the money coming in and out of the account? And so within this column B is yours to decide how you are pooling your money. What I recommend is using a checking account. Reason is, checking accounts have unlimited transfers out of them, where savings accounts, as regulated federally, give about 6 transfers each month. And so checking account lets you move the money in and out of your life as you need to. It creates just this consistent money hub, is a way to look at it. With our checking accounts, it is unlimited transfers. Like I said, there is no minimum balance. It's just a free debit card that you are using as you need to, and there's no sign up or annual fee that goes with that as well. It's just managing your money. It just makes it a lot easier and keeps it as well out of your credit cards. And so this is something that is planning for money that you actually have, not money you're going to pay back later. This is built off actual funds. Let's talk about these buckets. Uh, this is for those extra categories that you know that you're going to spend a sum of money within, but you want to have an easy way to track it within your month so you know how much you've spent already, how much you have left to spend. And this is the method that I have found works for this. So uh, with your categories, there is I did food and household. With this splitting and simplifying that I mentioned on this, the idea that if I'm shopping at a store, let's say I'm shopping at a just a regular box store and I'm getting groceries for the household, I'm getting all of our different meal stuff, but then at the store I'm also getting different household expenses, like household items like cleaning solutions, whatever that may be. I don't want to split those things out and say, here's how much I'm paying on my household upkeep and here's how much I'm doing towards my groceries. It is easier for me to combine that so I'm not trying to split receipts because that's just going to get complicated. And we want to keep it simple and easy. And so you could look at this with uh, food and eating out. This could be something different for you. If you are somebody who goes out to eat at different restaurants frequently, then you might want to make that its own category and say, here's how much we are specifically allocating towards this. So that is where I talk about splitting and simplifying. You just want to keep it easy so you can keep an eye on it. We have the amount that you've allocated in the top cell right there. So that's $600 for food and household. That's 150 towards gas and auto or transportation. And then at the bottom, you create that total cell, which is just G1, the range through G16. The total is on G17. Formula number three. So this is our third and last formula, I believe, for this spreadsheet is just a negative G17. So it's a negative whatever that total is. And I'm going to share an example of what that looks like. Um, right here we go. So you can see this. I've got within a month, I went to store one. I spent $52.96. I enter in that information. I select those cells, I copy it, and I paste it right there under food and household. And I put that same 52.96. This is the most amount of double work you'll do within this budget. And it's with this very specific intention and purpose of being able to track your ongoing bucket. So I spend $52.96 from my $600 amount. And so now I've got $547.04 left. And so at the bottom, you can see by putting that negative G17, this is assuming that I am spending still $547. And so I've got this included for what I'm spending on an ongoing basis chronologically as I'm tracking my budget. And then I'm still staying aware of how much I have left to spend and that is being considered when it comes to my final total. And again, this just varies. This just helps keep an eye on it. If you do overspend within a bucket category, it happens. Don't beat yourself up. It's very common. And you can just, at the end of the month, instead of having it listed because it's going to turn positive and weird, you can just select it and drag it to the side. And that way you still know how much you spent. I'm sure you'll be very close. And that way it's still just then tracking however much you've actually spent within the budget. This is just meant to help keep an eye on it all. And so you built all of these things. I've got 4 slides left after this. I promise we're almost done. Um, so you go through all of these things, and what you're going to do next is we are going to create this month. You have your monthly layout. This is meant to be, as you're making adjustments, you can go into here and say, here's my new format for this, but you're going to add a new sheet. So just at the bottom on the tab, you can click that plus sign, rename it to January, February, March. There's so many months you can choose from. But you're going to add that new sheet. You're going to go back to that monthly layout. And in the top left-hand corner, you're going to select that little arrow, and that's going to select the whole sheet. You can then, Control C, you can secondary click and select copy. You're going to go to that new month sheet. You're going to click A1. You're going to paste it, and it's just going to lay out exactly as this is. And then you can include that starting balance from the previous month. There is a way to link those starting balances to the final month's totals. And I will include that in the follow-up for all of this, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it for this session today. And so this becomes the easy way to then keep building these months, keep making these adjustments as we go along. And step 7 is just really inaction. It's keeping up with this as it all goes along. You can see how these things got listed out within this food and household. We've got the different stores, fast food, restaurants, whatever this looks like. Gas and auto or transportation, that's where we did gas station or gain an oil change got included in this category. All of it's included within there. On this balance for where we're just looking at the monthly ongoing, we've got the store listed, we've got these different services for the bills, the paycheck, and just as these things keep adding in, we just keep typing them to include. And so with this brings up an important part of budgeting, which is expense tracking. With budgeting, with financial wellness, so much of this is really built off what works for you, what is going to be easy within your lifestyle, within your focusing abilities, because everyone has different ways to do it. I personally recommend using a debit card. Like I said, this is hooked up to the checking account. You can spend as you need to. And this way you can look at mobile banking and it will just list on your app, here's all the transactions that you've had for adding them into the spreadsheet as they go along. You can keep physical receipts. You can take photos of those physical receipts to have a digital receipt. If it's a small notebook and you are just jotting down every time you make that payment, or if you wanted to use this spreadsheet just itself as a way to track this, you can within Google Sheets. I'm sure this is similar with Excel on a mobile phone. You can add a shortcut to your home screen. So you can click on it and it will pull up this budget for ongoing tracking as well. And you can just list things out on your mobile phone as those purchases are happening. I personally, I use the debit card and I will talk about that a little bit in a couple slides. Um, in action, listing transaction dates. This is again based off your own wants, needs, what's going on. You can see in this previous example, I just had the bills listed. I didn't have the different extra spending that I had going on. The reason is I want to make sure that I know where my bills are. And so I'm aware of my spending before my bills. So I have enough. But once I've spent that, it is not as crucial. I think, it's just the spending happen on this. It's easy to track, but just removing that step from the ongoing expenses is another way to simplify. If it's not going to make a difference, if I spent this on the 8th, this on the 9th, this on the 11th, then it's probably simpler if I just keep it clear. But including the dates can make you more aware of how frequently you're spending your money. And so it's really whatever you're trying to get out of a budgeting experience as well. Using a credit card. You absolutely can use a credit card for your regular monthly expenses. You have the power. It is a way to earn points for money that you have already planned to take place. So we're not just using our credit card wherever. We say, okay, well, here's all the bills. I know that I have enough money covered from my checking account, from my earnings and income to pay off everything I've included here. And so, yes, it is possible. You can use your credit card. You can pay off that balance because it's already all encompassing within this budget. That said, using a credit card, you run the risk of then holding off on making the payment because you're like, oh, maybe I want to keep some of this money just in case. And you also run the risk of just overspending in general. Um, and so taking away that potential harm and just keeping it simple using this checking account, always my first recommendation. If you have strong financial habits and discipline and don't run that risk, might be something you consider for using a credit card. But I generally recommend people go through their checking, but I'm not in charge of your life. And if you are able to maintain this, it can be a great way to earn some extra money back from percentage points. And within the spreadsheet, this is another thing I've been mentioning in action. So I can look at my starting balance, I can select those first five cells, and then it will tell me I have $9.32 left before my next paycheck within this. So I can't spend more than $9.32, or else I'm going to run that risk of overdrafts. And this just helps keep it clear about where you are at within your spending. This would automatically track within a mobile app and it would say, here's your balance. That said, if you are trying to keep an eye on it as this plan goes on, this is the way to do that. Some final thoughts. Within the spreadsheet, you'll see there is no fancy formatting. Again, we want this to be as easy as possible. If you are worrying about highlighting, coloring all these different cells, using extra formulas, you can. Again, it's whatever works best for you, but simplify, reduce as much as you can, and that way you're not caught up in the spreadsheet versus what you're using the spreadsheet for. A question that comes often is, how often should I be keeping up with my budget? This is going to depend on your life and what's going on. I recommend you do it as often as you need to. I think flexible frequency is okay if you are checking in, you know, every couple of days, once a week, every other week. As long as you are staying ahead of things, then it's not something that you have to dive into constantly, but it's just going to keep you aware of all of that spending. Additionally, you want to add fun. A budget should not be a limiting thing on your life. It's just a plan for how money moves in and out. And if you don't have fun things built in within the budget, then that can lead to people saying, I've been doing all this good stuff, and now I just I need some dopamine. What do I have to do to feel good around here? And they start spending their money trying to seek that dopamine in other areas, and now they've blown their budget because they did a big adjustment to then include some other options for that. Build fun in. Maybe this is discretionary fund. Maybe you've got a bucket for it. It's just a plan for how you're spending your money. You can add that in there. The level of that is based off priorities, for sure, and your own life and enjoyment, but you want to make sure it's included. And that ties into this final thought of financial wellness focus. You've got one life. Money is a tool for how you are leading this life. A budget is just a tool. It is not the life itself. These are not the end all be all. It is how these things work in action to reduce your stress, to make it easier to make decisions so you can keep moving forward, so you can reach these different goals that you have for your life. Because the goal isn't necessarily have an emergency fund. The goal is to feel safe and protected should an emergency arise. And or buying a home is creating a fun environment for my kids to be raised in. Whatever this is, it's really trying to look at how these things apply to your own life. And are you really reducing your stress and enhancing your life with the financial responsibilities we take on and as we view the role that money plays in our life? And so that's why I'm so excited for this year. And the webinar series that we are doing, It's a Financial Life. Next month, February 20th, I believe, we are doing simple saving strategies where I'm going to dive into all of that a lot more. And I hope everyone who's still here is there. Thank you so many people for sticking around. Again, I absolutely would have been in 30 had this not, I had to do this reset, but it happens and I'm flexible. So I'm happy to do this stuff. Since you all are still here, if there are any questions, I can make myself available to answer them. Um, or you can submit them in the survey. If you were interested in joining CAFCU, I included a resource for that as well. I see some stuff coming in. Is there a link to the spreadsheet? Yes, the link is in that resources or on the webinars page. I believe there might even be a clip in the resources to get you over there just for registering for future sessions for whatever you may be interested in. This is good. Thank you everybody for the nice comments. Some of the questions that came through the registration that I think are some really good questions. Somebody asked what I recommend for budgeting software or apps. I recommend a spreadsheet personally. Again, find what works for you. The reason I recommend spreadsheets, the reason I think this method is the most effective is because within apps, I found that I was having to adjust all of these different categories, all of the different spending. It wasn't as flexible as I needed it to be to match my life personally. And it was also if the different accounts were connecting correctly, or it turned into if this was on my phone, there was everything else I wanted to be doing on my phone that wasn't a budget. And so that's why I recommend spreadsheets. It makes it more manual. It makes, while you can still set up all those automatic transfers and payments, being more hands-on keeps you more aware. And that's where it just really keeps you engaged in this process of budgeting, of planning your life financially. Another question that came up was about saving for a courier van for medical business and just for general transportation. And we're going to talk about some of that next month. But again, it's just having those goals, whatever they may be, having a designated account to deposit that money into, so you're keeping it separate, that you're building towards something, and then just really trying to break down how much is needed. That's one of the great things about a budget. It's based off those real numbers. And so if my goal is to build my emergency fund by to $400, then I can say, all right, if I did $100 each month, I got four. Um, sorry, I'm just reading some of these questions. And so yes, that's the 400 then for building that emergency, and you can plan that out accordingly, and really split that up as you need to. The question is, you talked about reducing debt. And although there will be a different session to dive in, what are some recommendations for people who can't get consolidated loans because their debt is too high? That is a great question. Thank you. Yes, debt consolidation is a great option. And if your credit is not in that place to be approved on your own, you can look at getting a cosigner. This is again based off everyone's comfort level, who you know, and your level of responsibility for making sure everything's covered is one option. Otherwise, what I would recommend will cover more in March 20th, but really aggressively paying down one of the debts and probably a credit card. It can vary, of course, based off the specifics, but the reason a credit card is it is revolving debt. And so that makes up 30% of your credit score under a FICO scoring model. And that's the second largest portion of your credit score is that 30% with the revolving debt. And so paying that balance down helps improve your credit score. That's then also going to free up your monthly money available to pay down other stuff. And so it's going to improve your credit. It's going to pay down what you owe overall to help get you ready for that consolidation. And it helps drive that focus towards taking care of that high interest credit card. Is one approach to it. Many different ways. We're going to talk about more, but I think credit cards are a great place to start just because of the high interest and that tie in with revolving debt. 35% of your credit score is making payments on time. And so that's where, again, within this budget, paying in advance, getting things early, really making those payments happen on time is going to do wonders for a credit score. Okay. Last question that I have was somebody had mentioned budgeting with a partner. And so how do you keep the budget? Let me see if I can pull this up. No, it was specifically, it was something to, if I am budgeting with a partner, how do I keep both of us on track within this and or keep them engaged in the process as well? And communication obviously is the biggest key. And I think that's where you look at that idea of what are we building towards with this budget? Having that mutual buy-in on the goal makes it easier to stay focused towards, we're accomplishing this together. It's so much easier to do this with other people and combining incomes than to be managing everything as an individual. And I think keeping the partner aware of that can help uh, with their own spending habits as they may differ. Additionally, something that's recommended is setting up discretionary money available for each person. So each person would have, let's say, $50 a month. Again, it's going to be based off you. The idea being that you can spend this $50 on whatever you want. It's judgment-free money, and you don't have to feel guilty about spending and it taking away from your different goals. Um, and that it's something that you have planned for that you can use for these different fun things and that you can spend without that shame that can sometimes be associated if a budget is so tight and then that overspending happens elsewhere. This gives you a little wiggle room for that when navigating what can be a very emotionally intense subject of money because it is so tied in with everything else. This was all the questions I've received toward that registration. Nothing else has come through the chat, so I'm gonna wrap all of this up